Welcome to our CEO Insights sessions. We do 2 of these per month on the People Strategy podcast, and I cannot wait for you to join us this week as we chat with a CEO about key insights of how they've implemented a people strategy in their business. Join me in welcoming our guest for this week. Welcome to the People Strategy Podcast. Today, we have the privilege of chatting with Jeff Mould. Jeff is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Stony Creek. And what's fantastic about this episode is we get to hear from Jeff, who has been coached by Byron Lowe. Byron was on our show last week. And so Jeff is what he considers to be a reluctant leader, meaning he's been asked to be in each of the roles that he's stepped into and really looked at and connected to. Does what I have to offer and my key strengths match with the mission, vision, and values of the organization and where they're looking to go? So join me in welcoming Jeff to the show, and I hope you enjoy this impactful conversation. Well, Jeff, it is fantastic to chat with you, and I'm so interested to hear your journey and your big why after having a conversation with Byron, and our listeners listened to Byron last week. So I'm curious, what is your big why?
Well, Tracy, it's great to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. Our big why at Stony Creek comes in the form of a just cause, and we define that as championing the success of like-minded people in their personal and professional development through passionate, genuine hospitality.
How did the Stony Creek just cause come out of your big why?
I have always been passionate most of my adult life that I can remember in being a part of people's development. I have benefited greatly in my life for people investing in me, had some wonderful mentors, and developed a vision and a passion very early on, to the degree that like-minded people want to invite me into their story to help their success. And when I joined Stony Creek, our founder, Jim Thompson, who founded the company 25 years ago, was very passionate about a people-first company and helping people succeed. And that like-mindedness and that synergy just really fit together very, very well.
And so when you look at that synergy that fit together with, the individual that had left along with, what that just cause is, how has that impacted you as a reluctant leader? And I love the definition of reluctant leader as well.
A lot of opportunities, most of the opportunities in my career have been opportunities where the organization has had some kind of existential crisis, and they were in a position of identifying that either the organization needed to turn around or it needed a massive change to take place within the operations and the culture of the company. And the reluctant leader really just came, number one, that there's a certain reluctance just for the scope and scale of the career opportunities that I've had. That some of these were 50-year-old organizations, and relationships were broken and needed to be healed. And so the scale made me reluctant, knowing the amount of physical and emotional energy that was going to be required. And then the other part of being a reluctant leader is that my career opportunities have always come from being asked to consider the job as opposed to applying. And because of that, I did not always feel that what was required by way of skill set, that I didn't necessarily always possess all of the skill sets needed. And so there was always a sense of reluctance that as long as the leaders of that organization understood what my area of expertise was and what it wasn't, and they could accept that as part of the solution, I'd be willing to help. But a little bit of reluctance committing to things that I didn't always have that area of expertise in.
So that reluctance of saying, hey, you're naming right off the bat, here's my strengths, and I want to ensure when I step into this role that I'm truly going to be in a role that plays to my strengths versus doing all the things. And I want to ensure that those expectations are clear.
Absolutely. And really with the big picture of aligning with the mission of the organization, not having any surprises pop up 3 months, 6 months into my tenure, of, hey, why didn't you tell us that didn't have experience in this area? Because I certainly wouldn't want to be a vehicle from distracting from the organization's mission and best chances of success.
Absolutely. So it's like, hey, what's in the best interest of you as an organization
Yep,
and you as the ownership group? And what's also that match for what's in the best interest of me and my
that's
personal
right.
goals that turn into those very passionate organizational goals.
Absolutely. Because within that alignment and the clarity of setting up expectations, my expectations of the organization, their expectations of me, the commitment to clarity and just being very transparent at the front end, I think allows the organization and myself to best position ourselves to be in our flow state, to bring the very best out of and with each other, for the organization's success.
And when we look at that commitment to clarity, like one of the first things I asked you to do is to define reluctant leader. And I
Yeah,
know so much of your leadership is about really defining what that common language is. So
yeah,
everyone's on the same page with that.
yeah. Language is obviously very, very important in all spheres of our life. In the business world, I've really come to appreciate how important it is in leading teams that there really is a commitment and an understanding at the front end of forming a team that we're going to spend as much time as is needed creating a lexicon together. It's going to be a collaborative effort. We're not going to make assumptions about what words mean, and we're just going to put the effort into what does a word mean? And then once we agree on what a word means, what is the behavior that defines the definition of that word? And at least in my experience, it has never failed to be worth the investment of time to get everybody on the same page around common language and common behaviors.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting, Jeff. I spent yesterday with a leadership team really going through goals for 2024 for each team and defining what that is. And so often, I think we miss defining what winning looks like and
Mm,
actually aligning our goals together so we're supporting each other's goals
that's right.
versus different departments kind of like poking holes in each
Yeah.
other's because they're conflicting. And so I'm curious with that, you're approaching this, from a reluctant leader perspective, and you're also approaching it from really clear definition and ensuring we've got that fit to role. How has that impacted your leadership with your current team?
I think one of the impacts to my leadership is I've always believed in empowerment and delegation. And empowerment and delegation to me are mutually earned. And so I think my leadership, it's with the current Stony Creek executive team, has been impacted with the joy of just deepening empowerment and deepening delegation with the executive team. So as we've worked together, as I have learned the goals of my team so I can act on them, as we've created this framework of an ethos and language to which we can agree and hold each other accountable, it provides tremendous amounts of empowerment and runway for me to give the team to fulfill their goals, both personally and professionally, because we're not operating on assumptions that potentially could create mush in our interactions. We're committed to staying within that framework, that we've all agreed to, and I think that makes me a better leader. It also allows me to create new opportunities and avenues as the CEO of Stony Creek to grow in my responsibilities as well.
So when you say that, essentially unleashing your team's potential
Hmm.
based on getting rid of the noise, if I'm
Yeah,
just going to kind of rephrase it a little bit. So we're going to get rid of the noise because we're going to take the time up front, which can be some significant amounts of time to ensure we're in lockstep together and we're truly functioning as a team. We don't have any free radicals out here
right.
out for themselves versus alignment within the organization that allows each person to really step into a much bigger leadership role for themselves, but also do some fun things that otherwise they won't be able to do.
That really captures the essence of it. That where there's uncertainty or noise, where there's static, I don't think there's always the confidence for people to really feel like they can operate within the fullness of what they bring to the table. So yes, bringing clarity and championing clarity and having tools that we train to and we practice for those moments where there might be noise, and we need to deal with that noise honestly so we can work through it so that the collaborative relationship is the best it can be is it's a huge commitment, and it isn't something that inherently a lot of people have experience with. So I would say with the leadership team, there's also some reluctance of giving me trust in the process of, is this really going to work out? Is the return on investment of these meetings, of group coaching, of, committing to these principles, is it really going to be worth it? But when everybody has their aha moment of, yeah, it's worth it.
Mhm. Do you have an example of some of these aha moments?
Sure. Jim Thompson, our founder, was very big on people first. And, I think when he first started the company, it was very well defined. And over time, the phrase people first kind of got mushy, and it sort of morphed into being whatever somebody wanted it to mean. They were able to apply it to any situation. And when we did the Just Cause, the aha moment was, it is a very specific set of words and a very specific definition of championing people's success, through passionate, genuine hospitality. That becomes a much clearer lens that doesn't excuse misapplying a principle to a situation. The lens becomes very clear. Did you make this decision with somebody's success in mind? Was passionate, genuine hospitality a part of it? And I think that transition from people first to our Just Cause was probably the biggest aha moment that our executive team had as we were working through the lexicon and, trying to bring clarity to how we talked.
And that how we talk is a part of the culture,
Yep.
So it's like, so often I get asked, what is culture? Because culture has really become this buzzword. And,
Mhm.
we define culture as the behaviors that we allow or don't allow consistently in our organization.
Yeah, the way
And what
things are
I'm,
done around here.
yeah, for sure. And what I'm hearing you say is we're going to be really clear
Yeah.
on the way things are done around here. And we're going to give you that lens or that litmus test to test it. And if it doesn't work, there's going to
Yeah.
be some accountabilities to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say for Stony Creek, the clarity and probably the second biggest aha moment that really made this principle tangible for the team was introducing the idea that once we put in the effort to create things that hang on the wall, the belief statement, the just cause, the ethos, the other part of that is that it has to be lived out down the hall. And that
Yep.
really, I think that phrase really it continues to be an aha moment, even for me saying it today, that it isn't enough that we've checked off a box and we've agreed to these things and we can feel real proud we hung it on the wall. If we created a culture that then encourages that, we expect it to be lived out on a day-to-day basis. And that is sort of the ultimate lens to look at the framework through, is if we're saying we believe in empowerment, we believe that innovative thinking or creative thinking leads to innovation. And every time a team member comes up and says, I have an idea, and we shoot it down, we're not living out what we've hung on the wall. And so we work really hard to create a culture that allows people the safety and the freedom to approach someone in humility and privately and in respect, say, hey, there appears to be a breakdown in what we're saying and what we're doing. To also expect the person receiving that feedback to be humble in receiving it, not try and manage that person's experience, but say, okay, tell me about your experience and how can I serve you better the next time we have an interaction?
And I love the commitment on both sides of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not just a one-way road
No.
where sometimes it's like, hey, we're having a performance management conversation and it's all about the employee. It's like, well, hold on a second. You
Yeah.
as a leader played a significant role
Mhm.
in this performance as well.
Yeah, I have a weekly meetings with each of the executive team members, and I was meeting with our CDO yesterday, and we were talking about a personal situation, and as he was unpacking his talking with that team member, the narrative of him telling me how it went started with the CDO taking ownership in that meeting of saying, here's some assumptions I made when I set this thing up. And
Mhm.
here's some assumptions that I made. Might not have communicated them clearly, or I assumed that you understood the definition of word. And that's exactly what we aspire to live out every day, is to start with what is the ownership I need to take first. And then in talking with you, rather than talk with you in judgments, talk in tangible aspects of what's working, what isn't working, and how together collaboratively can we get through it.
So, like, what are those tangible things?
Yeah.
How do we move this forward? I got how we felt. And how do we move it forward in that partnership? Amazing. And when we had chatted before, and I'm seeing this here in this example as well, you talked about the importance of and both language. And you want to share a little bit about what and both means and how that kind of filters through.
Well, I've mentioned it already a few times, but being like-minded with an organization is the single most important thing, just decision in my deciding to work with an organization. So are we aligned in mission and values and beliefs and strategy, communication, accountability? And because I have mostly worked with organizations that have needed turnaround, some patterns that I've realized in leaders that work best in turnaround situations are leaders that really understand and are committed to approaching obstacles and the opportunities they bring with and or both framework as opposed to either or. Turnarounds need a lot of agility. They need a lot of creativity, that sort of out of the box thinking, reframing, and either or just doesn't seem to work really well. It's too binary and doesn't provide the agility and the elasticity that is needed for a turnaround. So I have found that when you have a group of collaborative problem solvers sitting at the table, that if you're able to approach it with both and thinking, you can really harmonize the input of a group of people, where the strength of harmonizing their input, this thinking and this principle and this insight collectively can be so much more powerful than saying, well, there's only room for this or this, and certainly with my experience in turnarounds, that and both thinking has been instrumental and almost a non-negotiable for like-minded people to really succeed.
So do you have an example of one of those situations where, you pulled together where things, on the surface may have felt like that they were actually, competing with each other, and yet, by looking through that and harmonizing it, we're able to actually get to something really beautiful. And before you answer that, one of the things, and we talked about this kind of in our conversation before, is I had a mentor sit me down at one point in time and say, "Hey, Tracy, do you understand the definition of multiple competing priorities?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "You're in a human resources seat, and you've got someone in an operations seat, a program delivery seat, and a finance seat. Do you think they're all coming at the table with the same needs?" And I'm like, I don't know, and it was this approach with this, like, I'm right, and it was like, here's the beauty of multiple competing priorities is that tension creates the best outcomes.
Yeah, I love that tension. And I think I'd shared with you, I see that when you have the right people at the table, that tension is positive. It's a positive tension, and it almost an iron sharpens iron kind of a principle. We utilize the EOS model. Well, I tell people honestly that the situation that we had to get through organizationally during COVID, we would not have been able to navigate without utilizing EOS and sticking to the EOS model. But EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system is very committed to having a scorecard, weekly scorecard. And I see the both and being lived out every year when we take a clarity break and say, okay, the KPIs that got us through the last year, are they the right KPIs that we need to be focusing on the next year? And to your point, we have finance, we have HR, we've got revenue management, we've got development, each sort of positioning and advocating for their KPIs, what's important to them, what isn't. And if we approached those KPIs with an either or mindset, I don't think the reporting and the ownership of those numbers would serve the needs of the organization nearly as well as that collaborative nature of revenue, the revenue person saying, I get operations that you need to look at this. Let's not say, or we need to look at this for me. How about we look at this and we look at this for me? And not only does it serve that person's needs, but it actually exposes the rest of the team to what's important to that team member. And it not only gives us better understanding of what that person's focusing on, but how we can better support them in their initiatives. And that would probably be one of the most instrumental applications of that principle on a weekly and annual basis.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what I love about this is not only are you exposing what's important to that person and to their job, but you're also enrolling others and getting
Yeah.
excited about their successes too.
I think it's really important that even when we're not necessarily leading, managing, and holding a person accountable, but we're on a team together, I think it's always beneficial to make the effort to really understand what's important to us and how we spend our days and what reports we're looking at, what meetings we're taking. And one of the things that can come from that is that you can make connections. If I know that my COO is focusing on certain things and has certain initiatives, is I'm out networking and meeting people, I might be able to, I might have met someone that has something that could serve and help Katie, and I can make an introduction, and then step back. And it's not about me. It's like, hey, you have a resource, Katie has a need. Let me introduce the two of you. And I only know that because we've taken the effort to get to know what each person is focusing on and what matters to them.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And as we were kind of chatting and preparing for a conversation today, I'd asked you, what is something you're really proud of on your team of a people win? And you had talked about this Think Week, which I'd not heard that
Mhm.
before. Do you want to share a little bit
Sure.
about kind of the Think Week and the impact of that, really in utilizing that as a people strategy?
Yeah. So the Think Week came to me as a result of an executive coach that I had, Byron Lowe. And Byron had let me know that Bill Gates had sort of pioneered this idea of leaders taking a week away, unplugging, and really committing to unplugging, and preferably going out somewhere, if not directly in nature, with access to nature. Reading is a big part of it, exercise, sleep, rest, which we all know that sometimes it can take 2 or 3 days when you take time away before you can even get into a place to rest. And so we've created for our executive team and budgeted a week of a Think Week for each member of the executive team to go to a place of their choice to unplug, to rest and recreate or recreate, as we like to say, and really just unwind and really take the time without any pressure of having to respond to emails, texts, phone calls, and really discover what is on their mind, what is on their heart personally and professionally, maybe some things they put on the back burner that they always said, when I have time, I'm going to come back to this and focus on it. And so we started that 2 years ago for the executive team. And how people have chosen to use it, where they go, is it's as diverse as our team members. But the impact of that is profound. When they come back, they are not only physically and emotionally and spiritually recharged, and it's very clear that they've been recharged, but the clarity of their thinking about things like, what do I need to leave behind? What do I need to keep doing? And what do I need to start doing? They just come back with a crystal clear picture in their personal and professional life of what we like to call start, stop, and keep. What do I need to start doing, stop doing, and keep doing? And I will always marry the words personal and professional, because in hospitality, particularly, our people really can't be their best professionally if they're not their best personally with their partners, their families, their community. And so we're really committed to keeping those two spheres of a person's life connected. That maybe a person's Think Week is very little about professional and it's about personal things that they need to deal with. We're fine with that.
Amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that, because it's one that gets looked over so often. And I know when you and I first connected, it was the day after I got back from Iceland where I shut my computer off for an entire
Yeah.
week. And like just the impact of that is so significant.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up today, what is a challenge that you have for our listeners from our conversation to really create some strong business and people impacts?
There's a lot of things on that list. I'd say the challenge is to really get comfortable with delegation. There's a lot being said and written about delegation and empowerment. The value of being a leader that almost over communicates and overemphasizes their commitment to delegation and empowerment with their teams. And also the expectation that the team that they serve is equally delegating and empowering their teams. What I have found in being committed to empowerment and delegation is that the obstacles and opportunities within the organization go further through the organization and they create an echo, meaning that as the organization understands what the obstacles and opportunities are, solutions start coming back. And we don't want, organizations that are siloed and cut people off from feeling like their voice can be heard and even acted on. And I would say that, and even if you are committed to delegation and empowerment, my challenge would be do a status check with your team and do a deep dive and get a 360 feedback. Is delegation empowerment really a value that's being lived out within your organization? Is it culturally driven with a commitment to get through the whole organization? Because the benefit of it is that echo where people are connected to what's happening and they want to provide and be a part of solutions to make things happen.
Absolutely. I love that so much because what we're doing is we're up leveling
Yep,
individuals at every level so that we don't have a leadership vacuum. And
that's correct.
also so that folks really see, hey, I'm capable of something much bigger than what
Yep,
maybe I thought that I could be. And
yep,
there's trust in me to do this.
yep. And I'd like to just maybe add to that. Certainly in hospitality, when we start getting into that level of a person's personal and professional life, I have found that is where people start seeing hospitality as a potential career as opposed to a job. They see opportunity of a vocation and they realize I'm actually passionate about this as opposed to I'm just doing it for a paycheck before whatever the next thing is. And to be a part of that in somebody's life, to me, there's nothing better.
What another phenomenal conversation that we just had with Jeff. And I'm going to walk through what my key 3 insights were from this conversation, lay out a people strategy for each of them, and how that supports you in very specifically heading what your business strategy is inside of your organization. The first key takeaway that I had is that commitment to clarity in order for himself and his team to be in the flow state. And when we look at a people strategy inside of our organization, it really has to do with culture. And do we have a culture of clarity where we are slowing things down enough and really spending the time to get really great definitions around what items are in that common language to ensure that we have the enrollment and the buy-in of our team with it. And when Jeff talked about commitment to clarity, he was very much speaking into this idea of being a reluctant leader and having that commitment to clarity in the fit to role for himself and his team. The business results of that are when we're in that flow state where we are performing at our highest level because the rest of the things are taken away. Guess what? That allows us to be engaged in the work that we're doing and hit the organizational goals. The second key takeaway that I had was when Jeff stated static does not allow people to have the confidence and step into their creativity and a collaborative relationship. So I'm going to read that again. Static does not allow people to have the confidence and step into their creativity and collaborative relationship. And the people strategy around this is really around, one, going back to what we had before, which is clarity. But when we can remove the noise that creates folks to be confused, to create folks to have this downtime or misalignment with the job to be done based on the tools that are provided, we end up with disengaged employees. And so the people strategy here is really to define very specifically what that business strategy is and what those outcomes are so we know what winning looks like so we can very clearly have clear job descriptions, clear what winning looks like with our orientation and our onboarding and with our mentoring and with our coaching. And so that really aligns into how do we inspire our team to perform with clarity around our goals. And the business outcome of that is when we know what the expectations are, we can hit them. And then the last key takeaway that I had is Jeff said, when we put something on the wall, it must be lived out down the hall. And that was such a profound definition of how they live their core values. So when we put something on the wall, it must be lived out down the hall. And this culture that is created that Jeff talked about over and over of clarity around expectations, we are aligned as a team. We're using and both language because we're moving forward as a team to achieve those key business results while also elevating each other. And anything that we say has to be backed up with those core behaviors. So, with that, thank you so much for listening into the People Strategy podcast this week. If you are looking to create some strategy and some clarity in your people strategy, very specifically around, hey, when do we need to bring folks in? What is it that we need to do with our folks as far as training? What does winning look like? Please join us for our next people strategy webinar where we go through very specifically what is that people strategy? What are the steps to it so that you can apply that to your business? With that, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Tracy, TRACI Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.